Hi, my name's Chip Baltimore. I'm the Senior Fellow for the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. The Taxpayers Protection Alliance is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization formed to hold governments accountable for the programs that they run and the taxpayer dollars that they spend. Taxpayers Protection Alliance studies a number of different areas, but one of the areas that we've been studying very, very closely is municipally owned broadband systems. Just by way of background, I've been an attorney for 27 years. I've been in private practice. I've been general counsel for a financial organization. I live in Iowa. I've also served in the Iowa House of Representatives for 8 years, focusing on tax and government funding programs. So I've got a little bit of background in this, but over the last couple of years, I've been studying municipally owned broadband systems, mainly in Iowa, but really all around the country. And there's a few things that we see in common with all of these that we hope that people become aware of. First and foremost, the only ones that have been quote unquote successful have been ones that have had either a large amount of taxpayer money put into these systems or systems that have an electric utility partnering up and subsidizing not only the initial construction and build out costs, but also the ongoing operational costs that take place. Here in Iowa, we've seen that there has not yet been a single one built in Iowa that has not had a municipally owned electric utility to help subsidize that. Sometimes to the tune of like 50% of the construction costs have been allocated to the electric utility, simply to make the broadband system sustainable on its own. And it's really not on its own. That's the entire point. But what we've also seen is that this is a market in an industry that is very much consultant driven. The consultants will come in and initially offer to do a survey, and they'll charge somewhere $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to do the survey and a pre-feasibility study on this. And they'll survey a few hundred residents and come out with some information that says something like, we found that 50, 60, 70% of residents are unhappy with their current broadband choices or somewhat unhappy with that. And therefore, we think that you should study this because we think that your community deserves cheaper, faster, more reliable internet than what you've got now. And everybody wants cheaper, faster, more reliable internet. So this communities are eager to try to see if there's a way to do that. So at that point in time, what the consultants will come in and say, we need to do a real feasibility study here, and that'll cost you $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 somewhere in there to do a feasibility study. And they'll dig in and they'll analyze the competition, and they'll do some speed tests, and they'll do a little bit more surveying, and they'll do kind of a preliminary cost estimate for what it will come about, or what it will take to build these systems. And they'll put it all in fancy paper and a colored report, and they'll present it to the city council, or maybe you have a broadband commission that's formed. And everybody thinks, wow, this is really great. We can make this break even for 40, 50% of the market, and we think that there's a lot of interest there, and we think we can make this work. So at that point in time, the consultants will say, well, the next step that you need to do is have this system designed. You have to design it so you know exactly how much fiber you need to put into the ground or through the air, what kind of equipment you're going to need on all the different ends, what kind of pricing you're going to have for your internet or your voice or your television services. Come up with a pricing plan and a business plan that will show all these numbers. And what we'll do that for you. We've seen those run anywhere from $250,000 to upwards of $700,000 for those kind of design and business plan services. So at that point in time, just saw this up in a small town in Iowa. At that point in time, by the time they get done with that, the city has spent almost $1 million just to study whether or not this is done. And that's when they come out and say this is how it's going to happen and how much it's going to cost. But that's not the end of the story. Oftentimes, the costs, once they take into account working capital that they'll need to borrow, oftentimes the costs greatly exceed the initial costs of construction for this. But by that time, the city's too far down the road, and they go ahead and do it anyway. And so far, we've seen very, very limited success. Oftentimes, the promises are, you'll get 80, 90% of the market. When we look at a study that the Taxpayers Protection Alliance did of communities all around the country of all different sizes, especially for those communities of 10,000 population or less, the weighted average take rate of that was barely over 38%, not the 70, 80% that has been promised. So these are all dangerous choices and dangerous risks that are being made, but really what it comes down to is the consultants lure you in, get started with a small fee for surveying, then they keep ratcheting it up, and next thing you know, the city's into it by so much they feel like they can't back out without having wasted a ton of money, and the results are rarely what are promised by the consultants. In some future videos, we'll go into some specific examples to show you some numbers and some exact situations so that you can see for yourself exactly how these things work. So appreciate your time watching this video and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.